Welcome to another episode of Africa's Next. My name is Macroeconomic. Africa's Next is an initiative of Voice to the Nations and Break the Silence organization that seeks to throw the spotlight on entrepreneurship, asset developmental, industrialization, and continent building and advancement too. Africa's Next is a special entrepreneurial mentoring program that is set to mentor Africa's next superpower generation. Our aim is to achieve this by pairing seasoned entrepreneurs with a passion for Africa's development and advancement with up-and-coming entrepreneurs to provide direct mentoring and access to funding for the entrepreneurial endeavor. So over the weeks, we're giving you back-to-back interview of individual mentors who are attaining higher heights in their various industry or their various sector of the economy. Today on our show, we are talking to a man who has seen it all and been it all. He has made it all. He goes by the name Dr. Joseph Kojo Asenso, PhD. Dr. Asenso is the head Macroeconomic Research Studies Division of ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, shortly called EBED, and Lome, Togo. He coordinates research, strategic plan development, and provide macroeconomic context to all investment decisions of the bank. EBED is a development finance institution, that's DFI, that is focused public and private sector investment in the ECOWAS, the aim in creating jobs, wealth, and alleviating poverty. Prior to his appointment to EBED, he was the head of the Energy, Oil and Gas Unit of the Ministry of Finance. His unit is tasked with the primary responsibility of ensuring the successful implementation of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act 2011, that's Act 815. Look through his bio, and we can see that he was an adjunct professor at Pentecost University Calais from 2011 to 2013. Afterwards, he moved to become the member of the University of Ghana's Ethics Committee for Humanities. He also has been a member of the National Accounts Committee and the Ghana Statistical Service from 2015 to 2019. His portfolio goes on and on. At a point in time, he was the director of Vodafone Ghana Mobile Fund Financial Service, that's Vodacash, from 2015 to 2020. He was also the director of Economic Policy Management Program, that's EPMP, and an MA program at the Department of Economics at the University of Ghana, 2016 to 2019. He was the team leader, economics session of the team that handled Ghana's maritime boundary disputes with Cote d'Ivoire at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Seas, that's IFLOS, from 2015 to 2017. So this is the gentleman we are talking to today on the show. We're still live on Africa's Next, and today is going to be an interesting conversation. We're going for a quick commercial break. When we come back, I introduce our guest for today. His name is Dr. Joseph Asenso. Remember, this is Africa's Next Mentoring, Africa's Next Superpower generation. Thank you to our sponsors, Break the Silence and Voice to the Nation. We also want to say a big thank you to the audience who have joined in our feed today. We're going for a quick commercial break. We'll come back, begin our discussion with our guest.
Africa is on the precipice of a breakout onto the world stage in a way and manner that has never happened before. And at Africa's Next, we are poised to enable this advancement. We believe in mentoring the next superpower generation of entrepreneurs to enable them push Africa onto the world superpower stage. At Africa's Next, we are pairing seasoned mentors, industry experts and professionals, policymakers and social change advocates, etc., with upcoming entrepreneurs across Africa to offer mentoring opportunities. Mentees stand a chance to access funding after successfully completing their mentoring program. Join the discussions on our social media handles at Africa's Next XPG on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and be part of our privileged entrepreneurs who get to be mentored by the world's best. Welcome to Africa's Next, mentoring Africa's next superpower generation.
Welcome back from the commercial break. We're still live on Africa's Next, mentoring Africa's superpower generation. We are grateful to our sponsors, Break the Silence and Voice to the Nations, for being there for us. We also want to say thank you for still staying tuned in. Today on the show, we are speaking to Dr. Joseph Kojo Asenso. Sir, good day and welcome to Africa's Next.
Good day, Michael. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a great honor to have you here.
Privileged as well.
So let's start the interview. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? If someone should ask who Dr. Kojo Asenso is, who is Dr. Joseph Kojo Asenso?
Where do I start? I think you said a lot of the things. Maybe what you didn't say was that I am a steward of a small Methodist church in a place called Asofan near Ofankor. I've been there for quite some time, so it's something that I do happily. I'm married with two girls, 3 years and 9 months, 10 months actually. So that's my non-professional life.
What is ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, and what has been its impact in ECOWAS region since inception?
The ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, a bit for short, is the financial arm of ECOWAS. And I'm sure we all know that ECOWAS comprises 15 countries. So this bank was set up more or less to intervene in these countries, both in the public and private sectors, with the aim of ensuring that we create jobs, we create wealth, and then we alleviate poverty. So that is basically what the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development does. It's been in existence since 1975.
Wow.
The time when ECOWAS was established.
So far, years after it was brought to be, what has been the impact on the ECOWAS region?
The bank has invested in a lot of areas across all the 15 countries, including Ghana. It has invested in the energy sector, road sector, hospitality industry, education, agriculture, manufacturing, financial sector, telecommunications, health, everything that government invests in. The ECOWAS Bank has also sought to partner government, then also in the private sector as well. And this is across all 15 countries.
That's been impressive. So I would like to know what has been the contribution of ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development to small and medium-scale enterprises, as well as beginning entrepreneurs.
Some of these areas that I've mentioned have SME'S in there, and they have more or less benefited from the objectives of the bank. The bank has sponsored companies which are very small, which are medium, and which are very large. It all depends on the proposal that you bring. If it is assessed internally and it meets our requirements, the cash flow prospects are good, the bank will join and then support.
So it's clear that there is no disparity relating to who can access the fund that is at EBID.
No, so long as you are located in the ECOWAS region, you can apply for support. It all depends on the proposal you submit and the credit risk committee's assessment of what the risks are and your ability to repay the loan.
In what forms do these funds come in, and how does one qualify for it?
So long as you have a business, you have an address, you have a history of performance, of good performance, and you have good prospects, you qualify to apply to the bank, and the bank will look at you favorably through the various committees that have been established to ensure that the bank's going concern does not get jeopardized.
So there's no external forces relating to who can get a fund from EBID or not?
No, everyone can apply directly. Everyone can apply directly. It's just like looking for finance from any bank.
Wow. Okay. How do you look at to assess entrepreneurs' requests for investment? If an entrepreneur should bring out his product, what are the basic things that an entrepreneur should look out for before they put in their request for a fund?
Like I said, you must have a very good track record of having a very good governance structure. That's number one. You must have been in existence for quite some time, and then performed creditably over the years. But
So
most importantly,
let's talk about it for a second. Say sometime. Which range can somebody who has been in business for 2 or 3 years apply for investment from EBIT?
exactly. So if you can demonstrate that the prospects of your business are good, if you can demonstrate, because it is not just about looking at the past, it's also about looking at the future. If it was just about the past, a lot of entities would not qualify. But then we do market risk assessment, we assess the country in which you are located as a whole, and then we assess the market into which you are going, and then we look at the prospects before we decide to help or otherwise.
For entrepreneurs, most of us really think that when we talk about finances, it's just limited to money. As somebody who is very vested in finance, can you give us a little brief when it comes to finance with reference to entrepreneurial understanding?
So it goes beyond finance, but I think, like you said, finance is the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
But you need qualified personnel to manage finances. Sometimes we overlook that. Sometimes we think that going into a business is just like running our personal finances. They are a bit different because every business has its own peculiar risks. And you need to be able to identify these risks in order to be able to mitigate them. For example, what kind of finance should you go for? Should you go for debt or should you go for equity? One person might choose debt because then it reduces their tax liability over time. Another person will go for equity because maybe they feel that they need longer partnership, and going for debt would not serve the purpose. So they would rather go for someone who will take a stake in the company so that they can move together into the future. So, like you said, it goes beyond finance. It's also about you have to manage risks that are finance related.
What should an entrepreneur know about finance that will help him build a successful enterprise and will separate him from the others who have failed to build a successful enterprise in Africa?
It's a lot. I think you need to understand your business model. Sometimes we set up businesses and we make them also runs. No. Every business should have a unique identity. It needs to have a unique DNA. Understanding your business model would help you to do a proper risk assessment for your business. What are the risks that you face? Is it liquidity? Is it interest rate risk? Is it currency or exchange rate risk? My business may be facing exchange rate risk, but your business may be facing currency risk, for example. They are not the same. And the mitigation measures are also not the same. I can have a lot of money today, which means I have liquidity. But my risk would be exchange rate related. That is, I need to pay my counterparties in dollars. But even though I have the money, I don't have dollars from the market to be able to pay. My failure to pay can rack up a lot of default penalties for me. Another person would have liquidity risks. He or she doesn't simply have the resources to be able to pay their counterparties. So the two risks are not the same. So you need to know your business model to be able to assess what the risks are. You also need to ask yourself about the kind of finance that will suit your business. Yours, is it equity or debt that will help you? Can family members or acquaintances help you? Or do you need a microfinance or a bank? You need to be able to assess what the implications are for each one of these. Do you borrow in USD or do you borrow in Ghana cedis, for example? So someone comes to tell you that I'll give you a loan of $100,000 with 7% interest rate annually. Another person says, I'll give you 600,000 cedis annually with an interest rate of 25%. You look at the 7% and you think that that is a bit more manageable than the 25%. But you forget that there is something we call the exchange rate. Your CD might depreciate or appreciate. So you need to be able to make an analysis of that as well and factor it into the borrowing cost. So you need to be able to understand this. We need to explore avenues where we can get relatively low cost of capital. Somebody would go to a microfinance company and pay about 7% a month because it's easier for them to get credit there. Another person will go through a very stringent process of securing a loan from a bank and pay like 25%. The two are not the same. The two are not the same. So explore all avenues. And you should also learn to do a realistic budget based on the business objectives and a work plan for the year. Sometimes we become overly ambitious and we set ourselves high targets which are not achievable. As a finance person or as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to understand that building realistic budgets would lead to the attainment of realistic results.
Wow.
Don't just set up any budget at all. Match your inflows with your outflows. You may have, somebody may tell you that, oh, I owe you 100 cedis, I'm going to pay you in 2 weeks' time. And then you front load your expenditure to a week before. You don't have the funds to pay for those expenditure. You need to match how much is coming in with how much is going out. There are a number of things. If I don't stop it, maybe we won't finish.
Still live on Africa's Next Mentor and Africa's Next Superpower generation. We also say a big thank you to our sponsors, Break the Silence and Big Voice to the Nations. We also want to say thank you to you, the audience, for constantly staying tuned in all our interviews. My name is the Macroeconomic. We're going for a quick commercial break. Before that, we encourage that you go to our social media page, that's our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and also our YouTube page. Send a message indicating the mentor you'd like to be paired with to learn from. We are back after this short commercial.
Africa is on the precipice of a breakout onto the world stage in a way and manner that has never happened before. And at Africa's Next, we are poised to enable this advancement. We believe in mentoring the next superpower generation of entrepreneurs to enable them push Africa onto the world superpower stage. At Africa's Next, we are pairing seasoned mentors, industry experts and professionals, policymakers and social change advocates, etc., with upcoming entrepreneurs across Africa to offer mentoring opportunities. Mentees stand a chance to access funding after successfully completing their mentoring program. Join the discussions on our social media handles at Africa's Next XPG on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and be part of our privileged entrepreneurs who get to be mentored by the world's best. Welcome to Africa's Next, mentoring Africa's next superpower generation.
Back from the commercial break, it's still live on Africa's Next, mentoring Africa's next superpower generation. Also, big thank you to our sponsors, Bring the Silence and Voice to the Nation. We're also grateful to you, the audience, for constantly tuning in. My name is the Macroeconomic. We are back from the break. We are speaking to Dr. Joseph Asenso. He's given us a lot of financial details relating to how, as an entrepreneur, you can access funds, how you can determine the kind of funds you're going for, where you should go for the funds. Let's get back to the interview. And on the other side is Dr. Asenso. Sir, welcome back from the commercial break.
Thank you very much, Marco.
So let's move on from there. This time around, we are doing a total focus relating to Africa. We do a specific focus on Africa. Where and how do you see Africa in the next 5 to 20 years in general, where you got to in the finance industry?
It's interesting you ask, because just last week, I got in touch with my PhD supervisor. After a while, I hadn't spoken to him in about 2 years, so I got in touch with him last week. He's Japanese.
Oh, okay.
And I told him about some of the things going on. It's like, even before you talk, I think that Africa is the next big thing. That's what he said.
Wow.
And this is an emeritus professor who is a very distinguished professor at that. And it clicked. It rang a bell in my mind, because then we have the youngest population in the world, right? We have a growing middle class. We have people that are ready and willing to go to school and educate themselves. And interestingly, a lot of these people are coming back. What this does is that once the real sector, what we call the real sector or the productive sector, begins to flourish, when SMEs begin to flourish and business begins to take center stage, the financial sector also thrives alongside, because you transition from the real sector to the financial sector. Without the real sector, there is no financial sector. So once businesses begin to do well, the financial sector also does well. So the hope that we have for Africa hinges on more or less a collection of people who are constantly educating themselves, who are young, and who have a growing middle class where the bulk of demand is created. And once demand for goods and services increase, the financial sector will grow alongside with it. So that's where I see Africa.
Africa in the next one. You made a mention that your PhD supervisor is Japanese. We have been thinking about this. Are there any innovative finance products that can help Africa or develop to aid and assist entrepreneurs to get a better advantage against driving Western and Asian counterparts with their enterprises, especially Asian enterprises? Are there any other innovative finance products that will help African entrepreneurs?
So I like to look beyond finance, and I like to more or less look at incentives. It's a package.
Okay.
Apart from government setting up venture capital funds where SMEs can more or less access cheap finance, relatively cheap finance, I think that a lot more has to be done. Because you ask yourself, how come that African entrepreneurs have to pay about 45% of their profits in taxes?
True.
This is a big disincentive. Because what most businesses do is that when they make profits, they plow back into the business. It is the profitability that helps you to source loans over time, because then the bank that is giving you the loan knows that this business is profitable, it has a future. But if a great chunk of it goes into paying taxes, then you don't have a lot of leverage in that respect, right? And governments, beyond giving tax breaks and tax incentives to businesses, should also begin to focus on them. Like the key procurement that government agencies do. Where are we getting them from? When we have small meetings and we have to serve drinks, where are we getting the drinks from? When we need to buy raw materials, where are we getting them from? If
they're getting them from the Asian and the Western counterparts.
Exactly. And it makes a lot of sense because China closed its country for decades for two things. One, to develop its internal manufacturing capabilities and to create domestic demand. That's what they did. So China is what it is today because of that. So we may not be able to do that as individual countries because we are small, but we can do that as a continent. And that's why I like the idea of the African Free Continental Free Trade Area, which I think, if we more or less adhere to the tenets of it, can help us to grow together as a people.
In a broader way, do you think ECOWAS can be self-sufficient?
ECOWAS is the biggest bloc on the African continent.
Yes.
By way of population. Nigeria's population alone is bigger than some of the sub-regions that we have. And that is why we have a lot of say in African matters. And a country like Morocco is exploring the possibility of joining ECOWAS. And Morocco is in the northern part of Africa.
Africa, yes.
Right? But it's looking at that possibility because we have the market. We have the market and we have the potential, most importantly. And once we begin to enhance or strengthen intra-regional trade, then we reduce our dependence on the external sector. and we more or less create what we call homogeneous shocks amongst ourselves. And we are able to live together as a people. We have similar shocks, and we are able to counter some of these shocks much easier than if you have differential shocks. And that is something we need to focus on, building intra-ECOWAS trade, intra-African trade, as a way of reducing our dependence on the external sector.
That's impressive. Still talking about the African business, how do African business achieve credit score ratings in order to access credit facilities from institutions like yours?
Credit score, I think, is a concept. And it's a concept which is related to one's credit history. So, for example, I have never taken a loan from the bank before. So, I don't have a credit score. So, many African businesses don't have credit scores. But I think what is most important is that you need to be able to build a proposal, to put together a proposal that is bankable. Because of the lack of credit score, many banks are asking for collateral security. And that is what is scaling a lot of our businesses, because then anything can happen and the collateral security is gone. And some of these companies don't even have anything that they can put up as collateral. But what you can have and what everybody else can have is a bankable project proposal, which you can now send to a financing institution and to ask for help. Sometimes it is not easy, but you never give up so long as you are alive.
Yeah,
you keep knocking on the door, and then one day something will come up.
So for those of us who are viewing and still don't understand the concept of credit score ratings, I think this one makes it way simpler for everybody to understand. So we continue the interview, and we would like to also know your institution, EBED. Do you have any community-based outreaches or workshops for local entrepreneurs who want to expand their business in order to give clarity for the best practices that they can adopt in their day-to-day running of their businesses to make them attractive to investment and low interest credit facilities? Are there any workshops or outreaches like that?
EBED has been a very quiet organization all this while, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners did not know about EBED until today. The new president of the bank wants to embark on a visibility drive where he goes out into the community. He more or less sells the bank to people who hitherto had not heard about it. So all these are part of the building blocks we are putting in place to ensure that the bank becomes visible and to ensure that we are able to reach out to the people that need to see and hear us. So currently there isn't any program in place like that, but it's something that we have really thought about.
That EBED has been on the quiet for some time. Why is it? Why is that the problem? Because it has been in existence for a very long time. So why is it quiet?
So it was focused on building projects, both in the private sector and in the public sector, and not necessarily branding the projects. So, for example, sometimes you see a road constructed by the African Development Bank, you see a signpost that this is done by the African Development Bank. EBED did not have that policy. So it was spending and advancing credit to businesses, but it was more or less on the quiet. But we think that we've gotten to a stage where we need to get known, and we need to put ourselves out there for people to know that this bank is here so that more people can be helped.
I'm sure after our discussion today, a lot of the viewers will know about the bank, and also I'm sure they'll start putting their plans together to come and seek for financial advice and investment from the bank. I said it's our dream at Africa's Next that we want to propel Africa's to the world superpower stage and enable us to rub shoulders with the other superpowers of the world by empowering African entrepreneurs through mentoring of entrepreneurs and providing access to funding. Do you think this is possible with the way our financial sector is designed and the reforms that are necessary in order to get us there? Do you think it's possible for African entrepreneurs to get to the level where we can rub shoulders with those from other parts of the world?
All things are possible, but you also need to work on yourself.
Mm.
Syndication is very important.
Okay.
We have had instances where some of these small banks in Ghana, for example, have come together to sponsor projects.
Projects, yes.
Yes. So it is something that we need to continue to do, because the depth of our financial sector is not that high. It's not that strong. And it's not just in Ghana, it's all over Africa. But you start small. I keep saying that there is virtue in starting small. You don't always have to start big, but we need to be able to build ourselves.
Okay.
And you don't give up. One good way of doing this is to finance bankable projects.
Okay.
The bank will grow with the projects that it finances. If the project is not doing well, the bank will also take a hit. So long as we can identify projects which perform, the banks will grow alongside it. If there are many successful projects which the bank has a stake in, as the projects grow, the banks will also grow. So it is a two-way street. The people that present project proposals to banks must be honest enough in their aspirations, and they must put out credible projects. And the banks, having evaluated these projects, must also do the needful and finance them. But a lot of times, so many crooks come up with proposals, and
Proposals,
then,
yes.
yeah, but then there are some very good ones out there which can be helped. And once they grow, the banks will also grow. The financial sector will also develop.
That's one thing we like in this country. I think across the continent, integrity when relating to we putting out what our true value or what exactly we want. I'm hoping that as we continue the mentoring on Africa's Next, the new entrepreneurs that are being brought up from the continent will have a change of mind and follow the new steps that can get us to the level we expect to get to. So another problem about entrepreneurship in this on this continent has been African leaders and various governments that we feel they don't pay much attention to financial engineering. And what do you think can be done differently to attract direct foreign investment to the country, thereby enabling us to acquire a certain leverage in terms of money power when dealing with foreign business counterparts?
A lot can be done. However, I think that we also need to do a lot as a continent. You know, the whole of Africa has been open for business for a very long time. We keep saying it. President after president says it every now and then. But for an investor, what they are looking for is, how open are you when you say you are open for business, right? What are the key indicators that an investor would look out for? What is the cost of borrowing, for example? Do we have the requisite infrastructure, electricity, water, good roads, etc., etc.? How long does it take to register a business? What is the turnaround time at the port, which is also very important, especially for manufacturing entities? How responsive are state entities in addressing business owners' concerns? If there is so much lethargy, you leave a lot to be desired. What is the level of security in the country? What are the possibilities of nationalization of businesses? These are very pertinent concerns that business owners have, or even investors have. So if you fold your arms and do virtually nothing about these things, you don't have to expect anything. But once people begin to see that you are addressing their concerns, one person that is inside will bring other people from outside. And in no time, many people will hear about the good things that you're doing, and they will also bring in their investment. So these are the things we need to avert our minds to.
Impressive. So we continue our discussion, and since President Akufo-Addo came to power, one of the major things I've been talking about is Ghana Beyond Aid. From where we find ourselves right now in the financial industry, do you think Africa can produce, industrialize, and innovate its way into financial independence from the West? And how effective do you think you can do this in the next 5 years?
I think the first thing we have to do is to change our mindset as a people.
Okay.
The era where we think that goods that are coming from beyond the continent are the best
The best.
are over. We need to more or less give local producers a chance by patronizing those goods. If there is no demand, there will be no supply channels. And Africa's ability to successfully industrialize is dependent on the willingness of Africans to patronize African goods. Like I said earlier, when the Chinese closed their economy to the rest of the world, they did two things: to build local industries and also to build local demand. And I think and I hope that the African Continental Free Trade Area thing would help us to get there. But we need to go beyond the rhetoric and make sure that we encourage businesses as much as possible. And the financial sector will tag along when they grow.
Still live on Africa's Next, mention Africa's Next Superpower generation. We also say a big thank you to our sponsors, Bring the Silence and Big Voice to the Nations. We also want to say thank you to you, the audience, for constantly staying tuned in all our interviews. My name is the Macroeconomic. We're going for a quick commercial break. Before that, we encourage that you go to our social media page, that's our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and also our YouTube page. Send a message indicating the mentor you'd like to be paired with to learn from. We are back after this short commercial.
Africa is on the precipice of a breakout onto the world stage in a way and manner that has never happened before. And at Africa's Next, we are poised to enable this advancement. We believe in mentoring the next superpower generation of entrepreneurs to enable them push Africa onto the world superpower stage. At Africa's Next, we are pairing seasoned mentors, industry experts and professionals, policymakers and social change advocates, etc., with upcoming entrepreneurs across Africa to offer mentoring opportunities. Mentees stand a chance to access funding after successfully completing their mentoring program. Join the discussions on our social media handles at Africa's Next SPG on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and be part of our privileged entrepreneurs who get to be mentored by the world's best. Welcome to Africa's Next, mentoring Africa's next superpower generation.
We are going back to our interview today. On our interview, we're interviewing Dr. Joseph Asenso. Sir, welcome back from the commercial break.
Thank you.
So in our conversation, we won't take a look into technology so far. How does technology play a role in the organization, and how can it be used to promote finance, engineering, and management across ECOWAS?
Technology is basically in everything we do now. I think when you take a look back 10 years ago, there are a number of things that have changed. These things were not there 10 years, 15 years ago. But entrepreneurs should understand that technology has become the core of business. Let's take a financial sector employee who needs to assess the risk of about 1,000 loan applicants. At the click of a button, he can get these risks analyzed. But the one that is doing it manually would have to do it one at a time. And given that time is money in business, you are really losing out, right? The fact that we are even making this call when we are at least 3 hours apart,
Yes,
is testament of how technology has changed the face of business. You know, gone are the days when we used to think that physical meetings were all that we could do. Now you can do Zoom meetings and cut down costs. You cut down conference facility costs. You cut down overhead costs for participants that are coming, and all the logistical arrangements that have to go into it. All these things can be eliminated through technology. And you are coming into an era where businesses will no longer require those big office spaces like they used to require in order for them to seat a number of people and to be able to have physical meetings. Some of these things can be done online at home. And once people begin to work from home, the company begins to save on utility costs.
Okay.
Because then the need for cooling and lighting reduces. And those burdens get shifted onto individuals who are happy to do it, because then they also reduce the time that they have to commute to the office. They also do not have to pay transportation to get to the office. They would rather stay at home and work rather than sit in the traffic for 2 hours. So it's a win-win situation. Technology is helping us to do things that we never imagined possible decades back. And every business must invest into it. Internet connectivity is very important. And I think every business needs to pay attention to it.
Every business in the world needs to pay attention to it. As an entrepreneur, I believe that technology is something that you can't take out if one succeed and go beyond the bounds of the country. So we would also want to know that your institution, what you intend to achieve within Africa, and which countries have you begun from successfully? I know your main focus is ECOWAS. So far, what is the dream for ECOWAS region relating to EBIT?
We have built roads, we've built hospitals, we've built private businesses. Some of them are in charge of supplying very needed inputs like fuel, and the ECOWAS Bank helped them to more or less set up or even to be able to produce these services, essential services to their countries. So we've also helped financial institutions. There are banks that we have given loans to. There are other financial institutions that we've given loans to, hospitality, industries, pharmaceuticals, other manufacturers. There are very visible banks and entities out there. We are in the Garden City Mall project in Kumasi, for example. We've given loans to the VRA before, and a whole lot of them. So that is what we seek to do going forward, and also making ourselves visible so a lot more people can access the resources that we have.
Don't be wrong if I say you have projects in all the ECOWAS countries.
Yes, all the 15 member states, we have projects in there.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm glad now the visibility is coming to be where a lot of entrepreneurs, especially from Ghana, can go and access investment ideas or financial advices from EBIT. 2020 came with its own kind of issues, and one of the major issues in 2020 was COVID-19, also known as coronavirus. How has the coronavirus affected the industry, finance industry? I think you should be one of the most hit. And where are some of the opportunities open to you that you may want to make available to access outside COVID-19?
I think there are just about a few industries which have not been adversely affected by COVID-19. And those are mainly the technology firms.
Okay.
But almost every firm or industry that I can think of has been adversely affected. As a financial institution, you work with debtors, and these debtors have been impacted adversely by COVID. They can't go out there to sell because of the lockdown, or they couldn't do it because of the lockdown. They can't cross the border to go and buy essentials because the borders have closed. So then they are faced with liquidity issues.
Okay.
And once liquidity becomes a challenge, it means they cannot service their debt. So what they do is to come back to the bank and say that I know I should have paid you next week, but you know what is happening. So why don't we negotiate and move it to, let's say, in 2 months' time? So as a bank, you also begin to face liquidity issues because you've also planned the year based on the repayment of these loans or the servicing of these loans. And once they can't pay, it means you also have difficulties. So every financial institution has been affected by COVID-19. But the good thing that COVID-19 has brought is the fact that, like I said, you can now learn to run your business with little.
From the house.
That has been made even more visible to all of us. That no need for those huge office spaces and all of that. You can work with little, and the office can be anywhere. The office can be in your car. The office can be in your garage. Like Bill Gates started Microsoft from the garage. So
Yes.
all these things are possible. But I think that COVID has forced us to more or less adapt. And that's where we all are currently.
So now let's look at opportunities that have opened after COVID-19. What are the opportunities for the financial industry?
What we've all come to learn and understand is that you need to cut a lot of waste.
Okay.
And businesses have learned that the hard way. That there are certain things that are not necessarily required. They are nice to have, but they are not core to the business. So it's taught us to cut waste. And the financial entities have also learned like the same lesson. So once you cut waste, you have enough resources to lend to businesses that come to you for support.
Okay.
And people have also come to understand that in the midst of the difficulty, there are so many opportunities. It will help you to identify businesses that do well in the midst of a pandemic. Like I said earlier on, the technology firms, the internet firms, they are the ones who are thriving. So the bank now knows which firms can do so well when these things rear their ugly heads again, and to more or less target their investment and resources towards those areas.
I would also like to know, I know your because of ECOWAS, there has been a lot of cross-continental response and assistance worthy of worth noting. As the bank, that's ECOWAS Bank of Investment and Development, have you done any giving out money to any of your ECOWAS states?
Yeah, so what we did was to give $1.5 million to all the 15 countries to help fight the pandemic. That took place between March and April, if I remember. So the president of the bank visited almost all the 15 member states and made these small donations to them as our token to help them fight the pandemic.
Wow. So this was done. Was there a particular project that was supposed to be used for related COVID-19, probably buy PPEs, probably used it for isolation, or it was just a general thing related to COVID-19?
Yeah, you remember most of the countries set up what they call COVID response funds.
Okay.
So those donations were made into those funds.
Okay. And now that the COVID has come to us, how do you see Africa now and the next 5 to 20 years based on the data accumulated from the various individual response with regards to COVID-19, regards to your particular industry? How do you think we can use the information you have picked up from this COVID-19 to aid the finance industry to get to the level that we need to get to?
Like I said, everyone has suffered from this pandemic, but it doesn't still erode the fact that Africa is the next big thing. But we need to put our house in order. Many countries will experience a recession this year. Many others will experience a slow growth. In fact, the average growth for West Africa was originally put at 5.3%. But with COVID, it's come down to 0.6%.
And that's not good.
Yeah. Nigeria, for example, will experience a negative growth this year. So it's a big blow to all these countries which were doing so well and which had recovered. You know, the 80s and 90s were periods where Africa did not do so well because we were fighting amongst ourselves. We have been able to turn that corner. Conflicts have reduced, and Africa had a lot of countries that were among the highest performers economically globally. But this has come more or less to jettison the efforts that were made. But the good news is Africa has the potential to recover much quicker than any of the regions, and ECOWAS for that matter. So by reason of the very fact that we are involved in the export of commodities, and commodity prices have recovered or are recovering, that more or less shows the efforts that are being put in for us to be able to have a quick turnaround. Again, I did some research on some African countries, and you realize that African countries have the potential to recover after a shock much quicker than a lot more countries elsewhere. So it's just our ability to recover. And because we are down there, getting up is the only thing that we can do. Right? So that's a good thing about our situation. And once we resolve in our minds that we need to continue on the path on which we were before by doing the right things, we will get there. Free trade is very important. Trading amongst ourselves is one of the ways by which we can do this.
So you're talking about we coming back after this COVID-19. We would like you to probably choose a country, take a country of your choice, and give us basic things you think they can do to bring them back after COVID-19, that's post-COVID-19, the things they can do to revive the economy, revive their financial industry, revive the industry which other countries can also emulate. So a country of your choice, and just give us some little bit of info relating to how they can come back.
Okay, so since I'm a Ghanaian, let me just start with Ghana.
Ghana, okay.
We are a bit fortunate because gone are the days where we used to rely only on cocoa and gold as our export commodities. We've had oil, and we've also been able to grow some of our non-traditional export commodities to a stage where when one sector takes a hit, the other one more or less covers us in a way. However, because there have been tax breaks for frontline workers, because the imports are not coming in as they should, government has lost a lot of revenue. But expenditure has gone up because when you give tax breaks, it's an expenditure. When you say that people should not pay the full extent of their utility bills, you are spending, right? And I think that these are the challenges that we face as a continent and as a country. However, we should explore other ways of building our economy apart from relying on the export of raw materials. We need to process these raw materials. We need to be able to transform the raw gold that we mine, which we've mined for decades, tens of decades, into finished products. We need to be able to turn our cocoa into finished products. We get less than 10% of the value of the cocoa industry, of the chocolate industry, and cocoa is a very key ingredient. Right? And we are losing a lot of value because all we are doing is to ship raw materials out there and for someone to transform it. Once they transform it, they add value and they take a higher value than you, did, because then transformation comes with expertise and it comes with technology. And wherever you find technology, you find value.
You're one of the mentors that Africa's Next has solicited to help young entrepreneurs wanting to become an industry specialist in finance as of yourself. What exactly do you bring onto the table?
My little experience and my willingness to help.
I don't think your experience is little.
But I think that we've come to a stage where we must all develop together. And whatever I can do, I'll be willing to do to make sure that someone else who needs help receives help.
Is there anything you would like the upcoming entrepreneurs to know about you to better equip themselves for the industry?
Um, honesty pays. And
Okay.
sometimes we forget that to be in business and to do business to the very end, you need to build a brand. If your brand is associated with dishonesty, chances are it will never make it to the end. Aside the skills that you develop, the skill set that you develop through time, the financial skills, the relationship skills, and all of that, you should also be known to be someone that is honest. And your business brand must be associated with honesty. Otherwise, eventually, you're going to lose customers. So people should learn to practice honesty to succeed in business.
And we are wrapping up on the interview today. We just want to know, so mentees that would like to be assigned to you, what do you expect from them, and what should they personally be prepared to do as they come and follow the footsteps they have created?
I'm sure there are things that we can learn from each other. It's not just me mentoring them, but me also learning from them, because everyone has unique abilities. My dedication to the course is unquestionable, and I expect them to be also diligent in the process and be ready and willing to learn.
Okay. So we have to say we are very much grateful for honoring our invite to avail yourself to speak to entrepreneurs spread across the continent.
You're welcome. Thank you very, very much for having me.
Thank you too for joining us today on the show. Also, a big thank you to our guest for today, Dr. Joseph Kojo Asenso. He is the head Macroeconomic Research Division, Studies Division of the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development all the way in Lome and Togo. So we are very much grateful today for joining us on the show. We also want to say a big thank you to all the listeners who tune in constantly tune in to listen to our show. We are very much grateful for staying tuned in. A big thank you to our sponsors, Voice to the Nations and Bring the Silence organization. Our heartfelt gratitude goes out to our production staff and crew. You guys are absolutely the best. Remember to go to our Facebook and Instagram pages, Africa's Next SPG. Africa's Next SPG. Go to our pages, go there, send us a message indicating the mentor you'd like to be paired with to learn from. Go there and write a message, send us a message indicating the mentor you'd like to be paired with to learn from. I want to say thank you once again for tuning in. I'm going to come your way same time next week with another exciting interview with another incredible mentor. My name is Macroeconomic, and this has been Africa's Next, where we are mentoring Africa's next superpower generation. Stay tuned. Enjoy the rest of your day.